What is up, New Beginnings Church? Happy Wednesday morning to you. Happy hump day, but let's get over the hump. Really, really great book of the Bible. Philemon. Again, if you didn't watch the first two, you got to go watch. Pause and go watch the first two videos because this is one chapter. So it's one story that I'm trying to unpack over the course of these 5 days. And so really cool story about a young man named Onesimus who ends up in the service of Paul, but he's kind of a runaway slave. And so Paul writes to Philemon saying, hey, I'm sending him back to you, but I'm sending him with this letter. This letter is really important, and I need you to read it. One of the things I want to address, though, is that, sometimes the Bible, it seems like the Apostle Paul somehow condones slavery. And I actually think this book of the Bible actually makes it very, very clear his stance on that. The other thing I think we want to consider is that the slavery that they're talking about is not the slavery that we would stereotypically think about as far as like the slavery that we had in our American history. This is more like indentured servitude. This is more like, no, you owed money, now you have to go as a slave and go work for this person and work off the debt that you owe. I think that becomes clear too because the Apostle Paul later says, hey, whatever he owes you, I'll pay it. And so this is a little bit different than how we would normally think. But you have to remember, slavery has existed in every part of the world for all of human history. It is just a part of the human nature and the sinful nature that we have. Paul never condones it, but he also recognizes that it's kind of built into the economics. But he's challenging you in this book of the Bible how you should treat other people, how you should think about other people. And so in light of that, let's pick back up. Verse number 12 says, Paul says, I'm sending Onesimus back to you, who is my very heart. I think you need to consider this, that Paul did not look at this guy and say, well, he's a young man, whatever, or he's a slave, whatever. He goes, this guy's so important to me. He is my very heart. That's some really strong language. Again, how a person's social status in life or economic status in life, or even it doesn't address it here, but your racial, like none of that matters. Like who you are as an individual is the most important thing. He goes, I would have liked to keep him with me so that he could take your place in holding or in helping me while I'm in chains for the gospel. Meaning Philemon had been a help to the Apostle Paul. Now it's Onesimus, and Paul's just saying, hey, you know what? I really wish I could have kept the guy. He's of a huge benefit, but I'm sending him back. And he says this in verse 14, I did not want to do anything without your consent, so that any favor you do would not seem forced, but would seem voluntary. Again, we talked about this yesterday. I'm not going to make you do this. I'm not going to control this situation. I just want to lead you to know I'm sending him back, but this kid is so important to me. He is my very heart. But I don't want to do anything without your consent. I actually want to, and I think this is maybe the language we ought to use here. I want to prefer you above myself, right? And again, this is where I'm talking about the book of Philemon being so special to me because it's not the theology, it's the practical living out of the theology. As a matter of fact, that language preferring another person above, that really flows out of something he wrote to the church of Philippi where he says this, this is Philippians chapter 2 is just one of the most incredible chapters in all the New Testament. It's unbelievably good. He says this, he says, do nothing out of selfish ambition, right? Do nothing out of vain conceit, but rather in humility value others above yourself, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interest of others. I mean, this is what the Apostle Paul is expressing. He's saying, look, I could put an ought to, I could give you a Bible verse, I could say, well, the Lord compels you. I want you to be compelled by love. That's what I want your motive to be. And I'm not going to make you do this. I'm sending Onesimus back. You do whatever you want. It needs to be voluntary. And this is the Apostle Paul actually preferring Philemon above himself. He's saying, hey, I recognize you took an economic hit. I recognize this guy owed you money. I recognize this guy owed you work and service. And for me to give you a have to, and for me to keep Onesimus to myself, because he is a huge benefit, that would be wrong. So in humility of heart, I'm going to prefer you above myself. Think about that. That's the Apostle Paul. He was a bishop over all these churches. He was the one that had the final authority. He could have said whatever. Philemon wouldn't have been able to do much about it. And yet Paul, in his position of leadership, is saying, no, I will prefer you above myself. I'll do what's right. I'll do the humble thing, and I will prefer you above myself. Again, Christianity is not something that is purely philosophical or ethereal. It is something that is very practical, and it is most evident in how you treat other people. Or we could steal from the words of Jesus and say, hey, this is how you'll know. This is how the whole world will know that you follow me. It is in how you love one another. Very, very powerful thing. And so anyway, love you guys so much. God bless you guys. Get back in here on Thursday and Friday as we wrap up this really unique and dynamic book of the Bible. Love you. I'll see you tomorrow.